Alright guys, welcome back yet again to Crossing Swords. We're excited to be here.
That's right, we're back, much like those racist tweets you sent out in your younger days because you were trying to be funny in an edgy kind of way.
Yeah.
We've resurfaced to ruin your lives.
We've reared our ugly heads.
Or greatly enhance it, or make very little difference on your commute to work. Either way, we're back.
Absolutely, and we couldn't be more excited. We've got some great things in store for you guys, including today's episode, obviously.
They're all crackers.
Absolutely. So, Jay, why don't you tell the people a little bit about what we're going to do today?
Do I get to do that?
You do.
Well,
I'm going to let you intro.
Guys, let me tell you the truth. It will come as no shock to you. It wasn't my idea. This was not a Jake idea. Now, I know you'll all be flabbergasted.
Yeah, Jake normally brings everything to the table.
It's actually a big idea.
Yeah, for once.
For sure.
Yeah.
He's put his arse into gear and given us something.
Yeah.
And you'll be very surprised, I think, because some of you will already know what's coming. It's Conspiracies, the sequel.
The sequel!
Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, we're excited. I'm excited. I don't know how Jake feels.
Quite excited. It's a little bit of a different format today. Before we picked a specific conspiracy theory, if you haven't seen that,
I tried to convince Jake.
Go back and watch it. You can find it on Spotify, Apple, Deezer,
literally
Stitcher.
everywhere.
There's literally anywhere you watch, listen to it, and YouTube.
There's literally
soon.
Yes, from today, all of our episodes, barring any technical issues, will be put up on YouTube in either video form or audio.
Yes, quite. So what the format is today is we're going to do a little bit of pitching. We've both picked a conspiracy theory. Now, I should say that yesterday, day before recording, you messaged me and said, "Oh, I hope we haven't picked the same one." And as soon as you said it, I thought, I hope we have. Because that in itself would be a conspiracy theory.
I know, but it sort of ruins the whole idea of it. The sort of idea with this one was to take what worked well in the first one, which was us disagreeing. And if we both showed up to this one with the exact same conspiracy theory, it's quite likely we'd have just sat here and gone, well, that's true.
Yeah, but how many episodes, though, have we promised to dispute and then failed to deliver? There was one episode, and you can go back and find it, and you'll have to do the hard work on that.
I think it might have been the Royals one.
But there was one episode where we kind of went, I think we're going to disagree here, gave our opinion, went, oh, no, same opinion.
I just felt like it would be like a real epic fuck-up fail on the first episode back. The whole idea is we want to disagree on this one, and we didn't. No, quite. Well, look, seeing as how it's your idea and I'm presenting it, I'm going to go first. Absolutely, you go for it.
So, this theory, and I've got notes, like, motherfuckers, I'm prepared. Now, here's the thing, okay?
He's more prepared than me for once.
Look, I've got to be honest, straight off the bat, fresh off the bat, you're going to think, holy shit, this guy's prepared. What the fuck has happened in between season 2 and season 3 that this guy's kicked it up a fucking gear? Relax, okay? I have piggybacked on someone else's work.
Why does that not shock me?
So here's the thing. So, John Ronson, who's my personal all-time favourite author.
The pod is a fan of John Ronson.
Huge fan. One of those authors that I get genuinely excited when he brings out
I used to keep calling him Ron Johnson, which really upset Jake.
But, so he spent some time and he actually sort of went into this conspiracy a little bit. And I've done some of my own work, like it's not all him, but the bulk of it.
I think I know where you're going to go with this.
That's fine.
That's fine. No.
That's fine. We're not trying to convince. I'm not necessarily as much trying to convince you as the people.
Oh yeah, but we don't really care about them. This is about us, really.
Good point. Anyway, listen. So I'm going to say it, and you guys are probably going to go, "Yeah, I've heard of that," or "No, I haven't," and you're probably going to go, "Yes, that's what I think it is." It's the Bilderberg Group.
Expand.
The secret rulers of the world.
Yeah.
The organisation that basically runs the world. Now, let me give you a little bit of history. So supposedly it was founded in 1954 by a guy called Joseph Rettinger, who was a Polish immigrant who was the secretary to novelist Joseph Conrad, who you may have heard, who wrote Heart of Darkness. And the first meeting of this secret rulers of the world group took place in the Bilderberg Hotel in Holland.
Okay, hence its name, yeah.
Now here's the thing. So they meet once a year for a long weekend, a 4-day weekend in either May or June. And how it works, and I'll sort of get onto how it worked, because it wasn't just created by Henry Rettinger. It was also created by David Rockefeller Jr., who is part of the Rockefeller family, who's like one of the fucking richest guys in America. Yeah, they're pretty well done. And Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands. Now, the brilliance of this is that it's obviously a supposedly Jewish group that run the world. Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, as a student, was actually an SS officer.
Yeah.
So the idea that he's a part of this Jewish group is
quite funny.
It's a certain
there's an irony to it if it's true.
For sure. Now, the way it works, this group, just to kind of give you the setup of how it works, is that there's a small office in Holland each year, or not each year, permanently, and they decide where the meeting each year is going to be held.
Okay.
They never have the meeting in the same place twice.
Okay.
And it always has to be at a golfing resort.
Why a golfing resort?
Because they like to play golf.
Right, fair enough. Well, they're allowed a hobby.
So they have two...
I mean, let's face it, they're ruling the world. They need a bit of a hobby, do you know what I mean?
Well, quite, but at these meetings they have 2 sessions in the morning, 2 sessions in the afternoon, but on the Saturday they only have an evening session because they all play golf in the day.
Well, fair enough.
You got to get it off somehow. Now listen, they sit alphabetically and they reverse the alphabet each year.
Okay.
For the seating plan. The way it works is that each country has 2 steering committee members.
Okay. So it's 2 representatives.
Two representatives from each country. In terms of the actual planning of the thing. Once it's been decided, apparently everyone dreads hosting because, as you can imagine, you've got to pay and fund a 4-day weekend where you book out an entire resort, pay for security, pay for meals. It's a lot.
So they have to cover the bill for everyone.
Yes, except for, now this is interesting, so I've got it here somewhere. So they don't pay for laundry bills or room service,
right?
Or telephone bills.
Okay.
That gets covered by the person themselves.
Okay.
Interestingly enough.
Bit weird, but all right.
It's quite weird, but yes. So the way they raise the money is that they take donations from Bilderberg friendly groups, so Bilderberg approved groups. Now, lots of people have tried to buy their way in to the Bilderberg.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, we're trying to play around with the sound a little bit here. We might just have to accept that there's a bit of a humming. If you hear that, apologies.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. That's the Bilderberg trying to shut us down. They know what's happening.
Absolutely.
So they take donations anyway from Bilderberg-friendly groups only. Now, these companies include Heinz, Fiat, Xerox, Barclays, Nokia, and you'll be no surprise that the CEOs and founders and chairmen of each of these companies are Bilderberg members.
Okay.
A lot of companies have tried to buy their way in, naturally, but they don't. They're not allowed. You have to be invited,
only,
and it is invite only. And the way we know a lot of this stuff, and this is what makes me think that look, its level of control on the world is questionable. But I do believe that it exists because one of the founding members, who I didn't mention, Dennis Healy, who was in the House of Lords, I believe he's now dead.
Okay.
He's spoken about it.
Okay.
No, it's a very secretive thing. It's a very private
thing. It's a bit
thing.
like Fight Club, I'm imagining.
Well, here's the thing. You just don't speak about it. And when asked, because he's done an interview about it, and when asked, why are you speaking about it? He said, well, because you asked about it. And he said, well, I asked a lot of people about it. They weren't very forthcoming.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, well, that's probably because they want to get invited back. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe he just reached a point where he was like, I don't care about this shit anymore.
Mm.
But, and interestingly, he described it as being private, not secretive.
Okay.
He said, we're not secretive, we're private. Same difference as far as I'm concerned. Now, I just want to run through a list of some of the members, supposed members of this group over the years. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
Pierre Elliott Trudeau, who was the Prime Minister of Canada and Justin Trudeau's father.
Okay.
Pascal Lamy, who was the European Commissioner of Trade and the Director General of the World Trade Organization from 2005 to 2013. Lord Mendelsohn, who was Lamy's successor in the European Commissioner of Trade. He's a member of Blair's cabinet. Emmanuel Macron, Angela Merkel, Paddy Ashdown, who was the Lib Dem leader from 88 to 99. Ed Balls, Kenneth Clarke, Chancellor of the Exchequer under John Major.
Father of the House.
Dennis Healy, as we've already said, who's a cabinet member and a Chancellor of the Exchequer under Harold Wilson. Prince Charles is supposedly in there. George Osborne. David Cameron, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, Ted Heath, Alec Douglas Hume, Margaret Thatcher. Now, interesting story about Margaret Thatcher is that Dennis Healy said that he invited her, and when she came, he said for the first 2 days she said nothing. She was silent, and they hated her. And he kind of gave her the elbow, and she gave up, and she gave what he described as a classic Thatcher speech. He says, I don't have a memory about what it was about, but everyone was enraptured, and they loved her, and it changed, and she was in. However, supposedly, and sources vary, but supposedly she was asked to dismantle the sovereignty while she was Prime Minister.
Okay.
And she said no, and they kicked her out.
Interesting.
Which it is a little bit interesting. I think so anyway.
So what's their overall aim? Is there an overall aim?
There is an overall aim. I'll sort of find it for you, and you'll have to bear with me. I'm going through my notes. They said that they want it to have a... And look, here's the thing. So they've said that, according to Dennis Healy, it increases the chance of having a sensible global policy. It is supposedly to bring a bit of unity in the world so that they can talk properly rather than having the standoffish governmental, we've got to have a face and you've got to have a face, and we can just get together behind closed doors and
talk a more honest
and find a common ground.
Than...
And here's the thing. So he said, and they said, do you rule the world? Do you make influential decisions? He said, look, you've got all these people from all over the world, and you've got, and I'll go back through the list in a minute, but you've got people from all different sectors, from governments, from finance, from industry. There is, without a doubt, influence is had on international affairs during these discussions. It's hard not to. So you can kind of see the conspiracy. Now, if I could just go back quickly through the list of people that are supposedly in it, because it goes on, it doesn't stop at Thatcher. Hillary Clinton, supposedly a member. Henry Kissinger, a member. Jared Kushner, who was the last year 2019 senior advisor to Trump. Condoleezza Rice was a member. Bill Clinton, a member. Gordon Richardson, who was the former governor of the Bank of England. Sir Douglas Flint, who was the HSBC chairman. Peter Sutherland, who was the former chairman of BP and Goldman Sachs. Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Henry Hines, Reid Hoffman, who was the founder and executive chairman of LinkedIn. Susan Beddoes, who is the current editor-in-chief of The Economist, Will Hutton, who's the former editor-in-chief of The Observer, and John Micklethwaite, who's the editor-in-chief of the Bloomberg Group, who are a software, data, and media company, and they had a $10 billion revenue in 2019. So these are big, big players. And the idea is supposedly that they invite Bilderberg people, young up-and-coming people generally, and the idea is that they can learn from more experienced people from all sectors, from finance, from industry, and from politics themselves. Now, John Ronson, the way John Ronson comes into this is that in 1999/2000, he met up with a chap called Jim Tucker, who was an independent journalist who shunned a very promising career in sports journalism to work on exposing the Bilderberg Group.
Right.
So he owns a paper called the Spotlight paper, or he owned. He's no longer with us. Now, they met up. They got word that the meeting was taking place in Portugal.
Okay.
Now, the way this came about was because one of his clients, one of his friends, a mole, who was an accountant for a number of people who were in the Bilderberg Group, and a couple of them happened to mention that they're going away to Lisbon in June.
Okay.
Or May, or whenever it was. And so naturally, he was like, okay. And this is where I find it brilliant, by the way. So he phoned up. All he knew straight away, it has to be a golfing resort, it has to be 5-star, right?
Yeah.
And it has to be somewhere that can be fortified.
Yeah.
So he sort of made a little list, and he rang them up, and he said, hi, I'm phoning from the Bilderberg Group. I lost my invitation, and I'm just wondering, can you just confirm that this is the venue? And he did that until one of them said yes.
So like you say, it's definitely not secretive.
So this is the thing. So they met in the Caesar Park Golfing Resort in Sintra, Portugal in 1999 was when they met. And it was brilliant. And so what they did was they went down and they scouted it out. And they went in, and supposedly while they were there, one bloke, manager of the hotel, sort of grabbed them quite forcefully by the arm and said, "Why are you asking all these questions about this group? Why are you asking all these, why are you being so nosy?" And another chap came along, clearly more senior, clearly more powerful European chap, and said, "Oh, don't worry about it. My friend, don't worry about it. We're here. Anything you want at the hotel, it's yours," kind of thing. And he says, "Are you with the hotel?" And he said, "No." And he said, "Well, who are you with?" And he says, "I'm with a different organisation," and was very vague about it, but clearly had some power. And when they're on their way out of the hotel, there was now a police motorcade sort of clearing people out, and they were like, "Fucking happening, man, the lockdown's happening." So they went back the next day. Nothing. The place is a ghost town, but they haven't set up. But there's there's workers only. There's no people anyway. They had a bit more of a scout around, left, and when they were left, they were tailed by this car, and they went on for a long time. And he said at one point he pulled over, and the car pulled over in front of him, and he's like, "Fuck, we are being fucking followed here." This is where I gotta love, and I've got to get this conversation out down. So, because this is just brilliant. So he called the UK embassy, the British embassy, and explained everything. "We're looking into the Bilderberg. We went to the hotel, and now I'm being followed. Blah blah blah." And she said, "Well, do you have Bilderberg's permission to be there?" And he said, "Well, no." She said, "Well, they're very private people. They don't want you there," kind of thing. And he said, "Well, look, can you just call them and tell them that we're not a threat?" And he said, "More importantly, can you tell them that I'm not actually with this guy? I'm with him, but I'm not with him. Can you just make that very clear that if anything's going to happen, we're not together?" And she said, and this is a quote. So she said, "Listen, Bilderberg is bigger than we are. We're very small. She said, "We're just a little embassy. Do you understand?" She said, "They're way out of our league. All I can say is go back to your hotel and sit tight." She said, "I'll make some phone calls, but whatever happens, don't incite them in any way. Don't fan the flames."
Wow.
And this guy got out, and he sort of just watched them from across the road. And Jim Tucker, the guy that John Ronson was with, got out, and he's like, "I see you. Peekaboo, over there in the glasses. Yeah, I see you." This is what I really like as well. So the embassy actually phoned back, and she said she'd spoken to the Bilderberg Group, and they said that they hadn't sent anyone to tail them. They said, "How can we call someone off who doesn't exist?" And John Watson was like, "Well, he does exist. I'm fucking looking at him. He's right there. He exists." And then she said, "Well, look," and I sort of love this. She said, "Look, don't worry about it." She said, "He's probably just trying to intimidate you, because if he wanted to do any harm, you wouldn't know he was there." And he was like, "How the fuck is that meant to make me feel better in this situation? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you?" Anyway, he disappeared, and they went back a couple of days later. They camped outside the hotel, and in the back of like local taxis, sure enough, people like David Rockefeller,
We're rocking up.
Vernon Jordan, who was Bill Clinton's best friend and unofficial advisor, James Wolfenson, who was president of the World Bank at the time, Henry Kissinger, CEOs of big pharmaceutical companies, they all were driving in the back of local cabs, and it was insane. I mean, and they were genuinely just a bit like, what the fuck is this? Anyway, one of the guys they went with, and I've got to find this because they went with a chap who was from the local press. He was like, whatever he was. He was, he was part of a Portuguese paper. He was an expat, and he'd reported on the fact that they're meeting, and no one else is talking. He said, "I've tried to sell the story to everyone," and they're like, "Bilderberg don't exist, mate. Get on with it. Get a life," or whatever. So he was with them when they went and camped out and saw the people going in. When he got back to his hotel, there was a letter slid under the door, and it said, "Bilderberg material is fascist hoax. Dear friends, I'm writing to you urgently to warn you about material being circulated about a Bilderberg conference due to take place in June in Portugal. The Washington-based journal Spotlight is quoted as a source of information on the Bilderberg conference. Spotlight is published by the fascist Liberty Lobby. The purpose of the material appears to be to make people imagine there is a sinister Jewish conspiracy that is trying to dominate the world. You may find much information on Spotlight by contacting any major anti-fascist organisation. Anti-fascism and against capitalism. Lisa Taylor, International Solidarity with Workers in Russia." And that was slid under the door, and the guy naturally shit himself and ran away. Now, I do just have to make a little side shoot because I did have to look into this. Because I was very, very curious about the fact that why the fuck is it always Jewish conspiracies? Why is it always the Jews that run the world? I've got it here if you bear with me, because I find it fascinating why the fuck it's always Jews, because it is like, what the fuck have these guys done other than suffer for millennia and millennia? Like, why the fuck are we always making them out to run the fucking world? Apparently, it's absolutely not new. It's been going on since like the Middle Ages. Apparently, whenever a Christian child disappeared or was found dead, it was the Jews who were responsible. Apparently, they were saving up the blood for the Passover holiday, where they paint on the doors. It's insane. Apparently, it took a real kick up in the 19th century. A German author called Hermann Gudge published a novel in 1868 called Beatitz, which describes the devil appearing before a mysterious rabbinical cabal to plan a Jewish conspiracy. And in the chapter called In the Jewish Cemetery of Prague, Gudge describes a midnight meeting of the representatives of the 12 tribes of Israel to discuss a takeover of the world. And this book was a huge success, and it inspired the author of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion a few years later. And that is an anti-Semitic pamphlet published in Russia, which purports to be the minutes of a secretly held Jewish meeting who were plotting to rule the world. It was exposed as a forgery many times, but it has continued to be translated around the world. And in 2003, an Egyptian television station actually aired a kind of soap opera based on the protocols. It still proves to be very, very popular. So that's...
So basically,
a bit of the history of
the
Jewish
hatred towards Jews is the first sort of recorded example of what we went through recently with Brexit, in terms of those people over there are the reasons.
Yeah, there was a big thing.
You've got shit going on.
Big thing against the Jews. So I'm just looking into this now. There's also a place called Bohemian Grove.
Yes, Bohemian Grove,
which is in Northern California, which does technically predate the Bilderberg, but has since been taken over by the Bilderberg. Now, interestingly, the very interesting thing, again, John Ronson...
How do they know it's been taken over? Because Bohemian Grove is supposed to be even more secretive.
Well, here's the thing. So John Ronson went with Alex Jones, Alex Jones, and do you know how they got in? They just walked in. No one gave a flying fuck. And supposedly there's this ceremony of care where they burn a 50-foot owl effigy.
Yeah, that's true.
And it does happen, and the guys... But here's the interesting thing, is it's all old guys. Because the young members of the Bilderberg Group are not so much interested in burning 50-foot effigies. But interestingly, in the year that John Ronson went, he saw on the board of attendees, Dick Cheney was in attendance. George W. Bush was the main speaker, and George Bush Sr. actually said later that year that he found out that his son had picked his vice president whilst on holiday in Northern California.
Okay.
So there's no doubt that things do happen. And again, if we go back to that thing of like, things get discussed. You can't not discuss things. Yeah. When you've got all these high ups and stuff, and it's.
Well, from the research I've done previously of Bohemian Grove, there is a lot of rules around what they are and aren't allowed to talk about when they're there. And they have certain times they're allowed to talk about business, but the majority of the time they don't. Like, they do weird stuff, like they put plays on, like quite high production amateur productions, and it's these big powerful people doing them. And they've got a tradition of dressing up in drag.
Yeah, with big fake breasts and really going at it.
It's all
and I
really
think what it
weird.
is, and here's the thing, so Dennis Healy again spoke about Bohemian Grove, and he said what it is, he says, it's basically, he says, they love the whole secrecy of it, they love the picture of it, they love the idea, it's basically just a giant frat party. It's middle-aged old men getting together and acting like kids, getting drunk, doing ridiculous drag, pissing around all over the place. It's that's all it is, and they love it. Now, interestingly, I have to say, Dennis Healy, during an interview, sort of is quite a keen photographer. He likes documenting things, and he was asked, "Can I see the pictures from the Bilderberg meetings?" To which he said, "No, fuck off." So quite firmly shut them down. But look, here's where I rest on the Bilderberg thing, right? It's real. Okay?
Well, yeah, it clearly exists.
Something absolutely happens. And again, like I said, it's very difficult to have that many people get together in that big positions and not discuss things.
I don't think these organisations, and so I'm sort of going to include Bohemian Grove and Bilderberg together. Like you said,
there's a crossover. There's a lot of crossover.
There's a lot. It's the same people in both, essentially. I don't think it's like they don't sit in a room and map out, right, well, this country's doing this year, and then this person. I don't think it works like that. But I think if you're the top people in your industry across everything, it makes sense to even a little bit work together.
Yeah, and it's that thing as well of once you've been invited to the Bilderberg Group, it is a matter of who you know, not what you know in this world. So connecting and networking in that way is absolutely going to advance your career. Clinton turned up a couple of years before he ran for president, and it was like, did they push him for president?
Well, they probably thought, do you know what, we can work with this guy. We'll put a bit of funding behind him. There's enough money between them, and
well, that's it. And you've got to question how much influence they actually have, and it's a scary thing that actually, I genuinely believe that these people meet up and that they genuinely discuss world events, and they move money between themselves, sort of like unofficially.
I think the way I sort of look at it, it's a bit like, well, people with no money sit and discuss world events, but we don't have the influence or
but they
money
actually
to
have the
influence
influence. No, quite.
So, but if I'm honest, if I was a billionaire and I knew other billionaires and we had ways of making things work better for us, it'd be very difficult to say that I wouldn't. But does that mean they're a dark organisation that are killing people?
Well, no, and this is the interesting thing. So apparently, there's this conviction that at the Bohemian Grove, they supposedly have. There's apparently reports of prostitutes being flown in en masse, which is again just plays into the frat boy thing. These just old guys that want to have sex and fun. But there's also theories that they have sort of built up a collection over the year of kidnapped sex slaves that they use. And it plays into this image of like, and that stuff you kind of go, come on now. But then equally, there's lots of reports of paedophile rings all over the world, and you think, these are the kind of people. There's a lot of crossover with those paedophile rings. That's a different conspiracy. There's a lot of crossover with them and these people. So, am I being silly for writing it off?
I think there's a lot of truth to it, but a lot that's wrong. A lot
of fiction for sure.
At the same time, I think Ronson and Tucker were right to be afraid when they were digging into stuff, because if you piss off those sort of people, they have a lot to lose. So regardless of whether they're a secret organisation. And they're manipulating the world, regardless if that's true or not, they've still got a lot to lose.
And I find it very interesting. To me, it draws a lot of parallels thinking about this with I recently watched Hamilton, the musical.
Yeah.
And there's a song in it, or a scene in it, where Aaron Burr is singing about the room where it happened. He says, "I want to be in the room where it happened," where apparently Hamilton, Jefferson, and Madison went into a room. And they were at loggerheads before, and they came out, and suddenly Hamilton had the plan, had the full backing to implement his financial plan across the country.
Yeah.
And Virginia, where these guys were from, had the capital. Was this capital city was going to move to there, and it was like that kind of stuff does happen, and it's like that's how I feel a little bit looking at it. It's like I sort of want to be in the room where it happens. I just want to be a fly on the wall and see what's being said. But anyway, look, that's my...
Well, I think with these sort of things, the power is with the money. So the people with the money are going to naturally have more power. And how do you get to a powerful position if you don't have money? It's by being friends with other people who have money.
It's all about who you know. Yeah. We know that for sure.
So Bill Clinton wouldn't have... No president, including people like Barack Obama, who people think are amazing and, beyond reproach. Even people like him. He would have had to have been friends with very rich and powerful people to become president.
Yeah.
I think they definitely exist, those sort of groups. As to what they get up to when they're together, we're never going to know. But no, definitely, it's hard to say they run the world. And then it's definitely even harder to go as extreme as people like Alec Jones and David Icke go to and say.
Oh, David Icke, David Icke. I've got to get this because David Icke actually did mention on Bohemian Grove, in fact.
There is links with Bohemian Grove to satanic rituals and
in
stuff
fact,
like
Ike.
that.
So Ike is the one that claims. So this is what David Icke, and you know we're fans. You know we're fans. Listen, I've got to tell you what David Icke says on Bohemian Grove, right? So he says that's where. So he's the one that talked about sex slave. He says that the sex slaves were actually kidnapped and brainwashed under the MK Ultra program. Do you remember the MK Ultra program? Are you aware of it?
No.
The CIA attempting to sort of invent mind control through fucking ecstasy. LSD.
Is that sort of like the men who stare at goats?
It's exactly the men who stare. That's exactly what it's based on. But there's been so many books and so many films made about this because it was like once the documents were declassified, it was like, what the fuck were you thinking? Like putting LSD into people and trying to control their minds. Like what the fuck is actually wrong with you? But he suggests that actually that's where they get the sex slaves. Also, you won't be surprised to hear that he suggests that Bohemian Grove and the Bilderberg meeting is where they turn back into lizards.
It's really frustrating. Like we were sort of briefly talking before we came onto the pod about conspiracy theories, and I mentioned flat Earth, and I said, and sometimes, you know, you'll hear like a couple of things, you're like, I could believe that, I can get on board with it, and then they just come out with something. And like David Icke, sometimes you listen to him, you're like, oh, do you know what this guy makes? And then he starts going on about reptiles, and you're just like,
even a bloke from clock's right twice a day, as they say.
Yeah, it's just really frustrating.
Anyway, look, that's the Bilderbergs.
Yeah,
that's my.
So I think we
pitch
sort
for
of
today.
Agree that they exist, but as to
how
what
much
level
the level of thing, yeah, and that's
I
where
think,
I stand.
Yeah, do they influence things? Of course they do.
Again, it's hard not to.
Yeah, you can't have that many powerful people in a room and not have certain decisions being made. As to whether they're the sort of group that is manipulating things to the level of killing certain people to make things happen and moving this person, I don't know whether that's going on.
Quite. So then, it's your turn to blow my mind.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to blow your mind, and it's something that even to today is very much something that's still talked about. And I sort of was trying to decide between two. One was Princess Diana, and one was Madeleine McCann.
Okay, can I just mention then quickly my worthy mention was that I thought I was going to do something really topical, and I said to you, I thought maybe I'll do the Epstein thing. That's really fucking big right now.
Yeah.
And what happened was I literally sort of like Googled it, and then they were like, oh, the documentary's quite good, and I was like, oh fuck yeah, there's a documentary. I'm like, do I want to watch that? Not really. Therefore I'm not that committed to finding out about this, therefore I can't talk about it. But yeah, sorry.
I mean, the only reason I didn't really do the Diana one, because just cards on the table, I do think she was killed. I don't think it was an accident. It's really difficult to actually find concrete information about it online.
Imagine that feeds the conspiracy.
It does, but then it makes it very difficult for me to research doing a conspiracy theory on it. So that sort of curtailed that. And then I tried to think of other stuff I believed in that perhaps went against common opinion, and then I sort of landed on. I thought about Epstein myself, but there's still a lot more to come on that, I feel.
But Madeleine McCann is relatively topical as well.
Well,
because they've recently supposedly arrested a chap in Germany.
Yeah, I
connected to it, and obviously you'll get into that. But just point it
out.
Well,
no, I'm not even going to really touch on that because, and I'll sort of explain why when I start talking about it. But my main thing is cards on the table. I believe the McCanns are responsible for what happened to Maddie. I think they killed her and then got rid of her.
I think it's a very popular opinion.
It is. Well, it depends. I think the country's quite split on it. Or
the thing is, I think for the McCanns, from minute one, it was like a real caught between a rock and a hard place. It's like either you conspired to, kill and bury your own daughter and fake the kidnapping, or you're guilty of completely gross negligence.
Yeah,
like you're really bad parents, or you're really, really bad parents.
Of all the things they've been accused of, and I've now sat and watched the documentary on Netflix twice. The first time,
commitment, people.
The first time out of just when it got released, the first time no connection to this, and then when I knew I was doing this and I decided it, I sort of blasted through it again and made the odd note here and there. And actually, having watched it a second time, people said it was quite a non-biased document. I would disagree. It was heavily leaned towards their innocence. They in the first episode they sort of just lay it out what happened. Then they spend maybe half an episode on the idea that they could be responsible, and then they spend the whole rest of the time giving reasons why that isn't the case. So as we all know, the McCann family went on holiday to Praia da Luz in the Algarve in Portugal.
It's a really Portugal heavy episode.
Yeah, it is. Unintentionally. Maddie, one night, Kate went back to the room, couldn't find Maddie, went back to where they were having their dinner that night and yelled, she's been taken, she's been taken. Now that is the first red flag out of all of it, because your first thought when your child goes missing wouldn't be she's been taken, it'd be she's gone missing.
Kids are kids, man. Like, and
kids
she was a toddler.
She was
so,
3 years old.
She
was 3 years old.
And they left the room. I mean, you'll get to that, but I'm pretty sure they left the room unlocked, so she would have just wandered.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, they were within about 100 or so yards of the room where they were. They claimed they have a line of sight. They didn't. A famous Portuguese reporter actually sat down at the table they were sat at. She said it is incredibly obscure. There's no way if anyone was coming in and out of that room, you'd have seen anything. So basically, you sort of walked out of this complex, turned left, and it led you to this door that was on the street that was unlocked, that led to their room. They then left the patio doors unlocked so that they could get in and out with ease, because there was a group of them. I think there was 3 families in total, including them. All of them were doctors, this whole group essentially, all doctors, all with their kids, and they decided, they claimed there was a babysitting service at the resort they were staying at. It was an apartment resort. They chose not to use it because they said it would disrupt the sleep pattern of the children and all of that. So what they would do is they would take turns popping into each other's rooms when they wanted a toilet break to go in. And they said it was every 20 minutes. It wasn't the restaurant staff that they spent their night at the same restaurant every night. And the restaurant staff said it was more like once an hour, something like that. So yeah, straight away they didn't use a babysitting service that was available. So yeah, Kate goes back to the room, kids missing. The second mistake they made was they allowed over 20 people that weren't police into the room after she went missing.
Smart.
Yeah, so the room wasn't preserved. Kate claimed they left no windows open when they left the room for the night, and when she got there, the window next to Maddie's bed was open.
Seems a bit pointless using the window when the doors are open, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, precisely. But
maybe the kidnapper was hot.
Maybe.
I'd fucking open that up.
But the problem is when the police. But then when she came back to the room again, the McCanns did themselves no favour during any of it, and I'm going to be honest and say there's no concrete proof for either argument in reality as to what happened. But there are so many inconsistencies into how you behave. Now, there's no normal. I don't know how I'd react if my child went missing, but I'd like to think I wouldn't tamper with the scene. So she's pulled the window closed and pulled the shutter down that's outside the window before the police have come. Now, the only evidence they found in that room around the window was a palm print which belonged to Kate on the inside of the window, which would say that she pushed the window open at some point. They even went into saying that if there was an intruder and they were wearing gloves, you would get a glove print, not fingerprints. There was no sign anywhere on any of the apartment.
Well, I think
that there was anyone who had touched anything.
We're not necessarily saying it was like a planned thing where the guy had like gloves and a mask. I think it was more like a
even
chancer.
so.
No, he walked past and he was like, hello,
this door's unlocked.
This door's unlocked, and there's a kid, and there's other kids. There's other kids in them. He's like, I only want that one. I only want the one.
No, but the problem is there was no signs of anyone having touched anything other than the McCanns. There's no fingerprints on any of the doors other than the McCanns. So what the point they were trying to make was there's
no one else has been in here.
No. Other than the McCanns.
From a forensics point of view,
there's no evidence. But you
guys are the only ones in.
And this is why I got frustrated watching the documentary for the second time, because there was policemen going on about, but there's no evidence they did anything. But there's no evidence that anyone was in that room other than them. So it was really frustrating in that regard. So yeah, they all panicked, try and find her. Now, one thing I'll give the McCanns their due on: the police in Portugal were fucking appalling. They took 4 hours, the serious response team, to respond to the incident first of all. So if she had been abducted, there's no fucking chance on God's green earth they were ever going to get her. And there's all sorts of you get those knobheads who come out of the woodwork who say, "Oh, I saw a man carrying a child." No, you didn't. I'm sorry. Like one of the right. So I'm sort of getting ahead of myself a little bit because I haven't actually done any structure to this. But there was a woman in the group who went to visit the kids at one point. Says she saw a man carrying a child, sort of cradled in his arms. And she said she just thought, "Oh, that's normal." And
or she said, "I did think it was odd that he was wearing a balaclava and gloves at the time, but you know, I wrote it off."
There was also another lady that lived in Portugal, that sort of lived in the apartment complex, who claimed a few days before she kept seeing a few men hanging around the place that were never normally there, and all of this. So it all sort of played into the narrative of someone was watching them, planned to take Maddie, but in reality there's no concrete evidence that anyone was watching them, anyone planned it, and there's no evidence, like you say, that there was even a chance. So there's no sign of anyone touching it. Like even with the windows, so right, fine, the guy opened the windows and snatched her through the window. There would be signs someone had touched the fucking window.
Basically, what you're suggesting is that your prime suspect is Casper the fucking ghost.
Yeah, basically, it's a trapeze artist that could jump through the window without touching anything. But if you follow the McCann story, the windows were closed when they left the room.
Which again, then you'd criticise the trapeze artist who's gone through all that effort to get in the window and all that, not touch anything you like, mate. Doors open.
Yeah, but. So the prevailing theory with the McCanns, and there's a bit of evidence that point towards it, that through all the commotion after Maddie went missing, the twins did not wake up for 6 hours afterwards. And the police noted while they were with Kate and Jerry that Kate religiously went over to check the twins, that they were still breathing, and was quite attentive to them. Now you could just put that down to she was worried about them and whatever else, but it could point to the idea that she was worried about whatever happened to Maddie could happen to them. So the prevailing theory is that because they would leave them alone for roughly about 5 hours at a time, they would leave them from 8 in the evening till about 1 or 2 in the morning while they were away getting pissed up basically at the local restaurant. So the theory is that they sedated the children, and that way they weren't worried about them wandering off. And the theory is that because the last time Jerry went to see Maddie was about 3 hours before she went missing. So the prevailing theory is he probably went back then.
Is that just to confirm, is that 3 hours before they discovered she was missing, or 3 hours before the suspected disappearance took place?
Yes, but before the disappearance took place, allegedly. Because the last person that went into the room before Kate did never actually went in to check if Maddie was there.
Right.
He claims he heard movement in the room that sounded like a child moving in the bed, so he didn't go in. He thought, "Oh no, she's fine," and then just checked on the other two and left. And then it was only when Kate went, she actually went into the room and Maddie was gone.
I like the idea that the guy was like, hand on the door handle, he's like, "Shit, no, I'm not meant to check on her. Shit, I forgot." Nearly.
So the one thing I would say is the police very quickly went from she was abducted to just solely focusing on
the McCanns.
And that was one of the things I think they really did wrong. That also, they wouldn't let the British get involved quick enough. And it was a small town police force trying to deal with, and literally from the next day, near enough, the press started turning up, and it became impossible for anyone to do the job effectively, particularly a small town police force. So yeah, the theory is that they sedated the children, they over-sedated Maddie, and she died, and then disposed of the body.
Which I guess is why it was relevant that you mentioned that they're all doctors.
Yes. The other thing that the police didn't do, or at least it didn't seem that way in the documentary, they only interviewed the rest of the group that the McCanns were with once, and then just focused on the McCanns.
I'll say this much: I've never really paid much attention to the McCann thing, because as far as I'm concerned, my view was very much like, look, it's dodgy as shit, yeah, and whatever, but it's dumb, man. It ain't ever going to get solved now, so absolutely. Just let it go. And the press are obsessed with it. But I'd never considered the idea that this is the first I've heard of the theory of the sedation. And what you're saying, and I'm sure but that really makes sense to me from what you've said. The fact that they would quite happily leave them for 4 or 5 hours,
yeah,
not a problem. If they're sedated, the kids slept through fucking 6 hours
But
or whatever, and we know that kids don't sleep well.
I think they kept up the rules of they weren't sedated by going and checking on them every now and again.
But that's why they weren't bothered about it being every 20 minutes, because like, right, fine, done.
Because they're all knocked out.
And the idea that they've over-sedated, over-medicated, is it? Or she's maybe had a bad reaction or something. I'm on board so far.
The only thing that goes against that, and I've sort of got counter-argument for that as well, was that from pretty much the next day, the McCanns were accounted for 24/7. So it would have been very difficult for them to transport a body unless they did it in that initial 3-hour period. So say when Jerry went to check on Maddie and she was dead, he would have had a small window of opportunity to do something with her. Because after that they were pretty much watched 24/7. They were never alone. So then the McCanns sort of went on the defensive quite quickly. They had a PR firm looking after them quite quickly afterwards. They got a local lawyer involved. Now, some of the criticism the McCanns come under is that they always looked quite cold. That particularly Kate never looked that remorseful.
Well, it certainly always looked. It was certainly a common criticism that they were playing up to the media, because they were frequently in front of cameras and frequently in the press.
They were.
It was like that was a bit. You know, and as you said, the other thing is like you look more concerned with getting your face on TV than you look of finding your daughter.
Yeah, and one of the questions has been raised that if they killed their daughter, would they go on this like they went on a world tour at one point?
Of course you would.
Have to,
because
you have to.
If you panic in that situation, you're like, holy fucking shit, like she's dead. Like, what the fuck do we do? And you're like, well, look, we'll play it off as a kidnapping. Like, fucking get her gone. And once the press starts coming in, you know, obviously with a bit of hindsight, you'd go, do you know what? We need the time to grieve. Can you all go away? But really, you're like, well, we've got to pretend like we're looking for her, so let's go all in. So of course you would. Yeah, no, I agree.
So one of the weird things that sort of happened quite quickly after she disappeared was there was a local man, Brit, called Robert Murat. I don't know if you've heard of him. He lived out there. He's an expat, and he could speak Portuguese, and he made himself quite readily available to help the McCanns with the police because of the language barrier and stuff like that. And then once he was getting and people sort of saw him as this Ian Huntley figure, because Ian Huntley was like very much in the forefront. No one suspected him. And then once the McCanns started getting more attention from the police, suddenly people around the McCanns said, well, do you know that night I think I saw Robert Murat? So then suddenly the investigation switched to him having abducted Maddie. The poor bloke had his house raided 3 times, his garden dug up 3 times.
Which is the interesting thing, because they only went over the place. They didn't go over the place as much as they went over his place.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, eventually, with the McCann's room, a man from England took his dogs over to Portugal, and these dogs were specially trained to pick up 2 different sorts of scents.
Yes.
One was blood and one was cadavers. And he's like the most beautiful dogs you'd ever meet. Lovely little dogs. Just wanted to put that out there. And to the man's credentials, they had been tested and verified by the FBI. Now, the things with these dogs, they are never going to be conclusive evidence of anything. They can detect a scent, but unless it's backed up by hard evidence, it's inadmissible and you can't really use it. But in the room, the dogs spotted 3 areas of interest. One was in a small cupboard in one of the bedrooms. One was behind the sofa by a curtain, and there was somewhere in Maddie's room as well that they picked up a scent. Oh no, sorry, the third place, it wasn't Maddie's room, it was in their rental car that they rented 25 days after her abduction, and it was in the boot.
In the boot, yeah.
They found traces of DNA. It wasn't they couldn't confirm whether it was blood, saliva, semen or whatever in those areas, and none of them other than one were particularly conclusive, because you have to have 20 markers to match a DNA sequence, and on one of them there was 15, but it was such a common DNA sequence it could have been the people in the lab's DNA sequence. So they didn't necessarily prove anything, but with the McCanns and the situation, you could get the odd 1 or 2 coincidence in terms of smoking guns, but when you've got 3 really odd places for the DNA to turn up, so all in hiding places as well, it's really difficult not to start believing they did something wrong. There was one policeman they had on the documentary that kept consistently saying that, I started off sort of suspecting them, and then as I started ruling stuff out, I just started believing them. But through all of it, there's no evidence that anyone's in the room.
There's nothing to rule them out.
No, that's the problem. There's nothing to rule them out other than the fact they're her parents, and why would they? Because this was the tone the documentary kept taking, was that, well, why would they kill their daughter? Well, I don't think they did it deliberately. It was an accident. But then they had to cover it up.
Or they chose to in that moment.
Yeah, they made a split decision. Instead of putting their hands up and saying, look, we fucked up and we accidentally killed our daughter, and they would have lost their licences, their home and everything like that. They chose, and they would have lost their other children. They chose to keep up a lie. So yeah, in my notes I sort of had, for example, when it came to the timeline they had, it took them 2 goes to have a timeline that worked amongst the group, which again could sort of you could make an argument that they wanted to make sure they got it right, and that there was confusion, there was a lot going on. So all right, fair enough. Why didn't they use the babysitting service if they were that worried about being able to go out at night and have a good time? Just use the babysitting service.
Because they had it covered with the sedation.
Why did the McCanns interfere with the crime scene? That's another question. Then when they were there was...
Yeah, especially at that point, she's come out and she said she's been taken, so she's already convinced it's a crime.
Yeah.
Therefore...
Why would you interfere with the crime
Why would you interfere? If you just thought they were missing and you were turning up the place trying to find her, different story.
And like I said, there was only one print on the window, and that was from the inside, indicating that it had been pushed.
Covered that, told you. The kidnapper needed some air. Move on, man.
It was weird with the dogs because the McCanns actually supported the use of the dogs, but as soon as they indicated
I'll tell you what I think happened as well. I think there with and this might be wrong, but where they're obviously intelligent people.
Yeah. They've
covered their tracks quite well up to that point. I imagine, especially at that point, they've had however many people they had all the people that they had in the apartment before they had the police. Then they've had the police. I think at that point they're relatively convinced that they've been smart enough the dogs ain't going to pick up on it.
Where the McCanns were quite clever, at every point there was ever any slight chance the police could have caught them for it, they found a way to not be involved in it. So for example, the police wanted to do a reconstruction of the scene. The McCanns the whole way through were like, yeah, we're up for that, and then as soon as it became a reality, oh no, we're not doing that. And the head investigator from at that point,
Interpol presumably,
said that usually the main reason we do a reconstruction is to get the suspects in a room in the hope that it's going to make them crack, give inconsistencies, and stuff like that. And that's what they would have been warned about when it came around, and that's why they didn't do it.
Yep.
There was a teddy bear that Kate McCann used to carry around called Cuddle Cat, that Madeline was apparently very reliant on. It was something she was never without.
Yes, inseparable from it. I do recall that, yes.
Now, for a certain period, Kate carried that around constantly, whether you did not see her on camera.
No, every press conference.
Yeah. The sniffer dogs, because there was an accusation that the room could have been staged and stuff like that, an independent group got a load of the McCann stuff together, including Cuddle Cat, put it in a room, sent the dogs in. They went to Cuddle. The cadaver dog signified that Cuddle Cat had cadaver scents on it as well. And there was one interview they did where Jerry was asked about, what do you think about the fact that dogs have indicated there's blood samples and cadaver fluid about, and he snapped and stormed out of the interview.
Which obviously is easy to play down as an emotional parent reacting to the suggestion that their child is dead.
Yeah, and then the McCanns did something that looked really dodgy. They left the country.
Yeah.
They got made what is called in Portugal arguido, which is prime suspect essentially. And as soon as that happened...
So that education as well, you learn Portuguese on crossing swords.
They hot-tailed out of Portugal and never came back for a long time. The problem is with all of it, the only way they would have ever caught them on it, and I think they missed a trick not pushing the group they were with harder, because I think they would have found inconsistencies and they could have caught them on that. But there was no way they were ever going to find evidence and anything concrete. They weren't going to find samples. They weren't going to find her. And I think my prevailing theory is the place they were at every single day without fail for about a week or two after her disappearance was the local church, and they became very close with the priest at that local church and his wife. My theory is that they got the body to the church, stored her somewhere, and then once things died down a little bit, they had someone bury her or burn the body or dispose of her in some way, and I think that's what happened.
So let me ask you this then. From minute one, from that night, what do you think happened? Even from maybe from the start of their holiday, what's the picture that you see as the most likely outcome?
Well, I think it points towards they wanted to have a holiday as well, so they wanted their evenings to themselves. One of the things that was written in the hotel restaurant booking book was that the McCanns booked this table a week in advance, and the reason in this book, because you weren't allowed to do that, you weren't allowed to reserve tables, was because they were leaving their children in their room. They actually wrote that in this book, so I think they had their evenings to themselves. I don't see how logically, unless they were sedated, how you could trust the children wouldn't get up and wander off. So I think they sedated them every evening. How they got hold of the sedation, I'm not sure.
Not a stretch for doctors, though, is it?
No, it's not. It wouldn't be difficult for them to get hold of it.
Even if they went to the local pharmacy and picked up some over-the-counter stuff, they probably know what they needed to mix.
And I think they sedated the children so they could go out every evening, get drunk, have a good time. And I just think it went wrong. I don't think there was anything sadistic in any of it. I think they thought in their heads it was all quite planned out, but I think perhaps with drinking and everything like that, they probably weren't paying as much attention as they should have, and overstated Maddie. I then think when Jerry discovered she was dead, I think he alerted Kate to it in some way. And then I think between them they came up with a plan, hid her in the room somewhere that night before the next person came to check, and I think that's how it worked. The rest of the group refused to talk to the press, the police, after that first interview, so it was near impossible to get any information from them, and they just made it as difficult as humanly possible, the McCanns.
They were very
to help the police. Now there was a very tense relationship between the two, because it was very clear the police thought it was them.
But is that them? But you've got to ask yourself: is that them thinking, my God, how could you even accuse us of that? Or is it them thinking like,
and that's the
fuck,
defense
it is
they
us,
get
so
given.
fuck you?
You're accusing them of a horrific crime, so of course they're not going to want to.
No, it's easy to dismiss a lot of it as emotional parents.
If you were completely innocent and you genuinely believed your daughter had been taken, you would cooperate in every way possible to make sure your child was found, or that your name was cleared at the very least. And at no point did they demonstrate that that's what they were going to try and do.
So let me ask you this then. Do you believe that they have paid the price? Because obviously, look, they're not, there's no way they're going guilty. But as soon as the press got wind that it might have been them, they were crucified. They couldn't go anywhere without some kind of abuse.
I think the only people that have paid the price are their remaining children.
Yeah.
And one of the things they kept talking about in the documentary was actually how good they were with their children. Their children weren't afraid of them. And I think you're missing the point.
Because it wasn't a sadistic thing.
It wasn't a murder in terms of Jerry got
It was manslaughter. It wasn't
night.
murder. It was manslaughter.
It was an accident. And I genuinely believe
it was negligence.
That. Yeah, it was absolute negligence. One, leaving them on their own, and two, I believe they sedated them. And I think they were very selfish and they made a mistake. And I think they then made a decision to cover it up, and everything they have done since. I haven't seen, I've watched quite a few interviews with them. I've never really seen grieving parents. I've seen two people that have had to go along with this situation for the rest of the time. And then they had a millionaire come along and bankroll their PR and everything like that. Because this was the thing, there was a PR man on the documentary that said they approached him and his firm to represent them. But he actually felt doing that would go against them. You're going to look too slick. You've got why
would you have a PR team?
For me, the only way it would ever work to sell yourselves as the grieving parents is to be that on camera, not to have a PR representative do all your talking.
And then let me ask you this then: what do you think about when they released the book?
What, the McCanns?
Yes.
Oh, it's difficult because you could see it in one or two ways. It's either they're trying to tell their side of it, because a lot has been said about them over the years. A lot of stuff probably has been quite... Because at the time, the news could basically say whatever they like. The shit they were coming out with no proof whatsoever. A bit like me right
but obviously,
now, to be fair.
Obviously there's the argument that they were just defending themselves, but there is also the argument that...
They were profiting off of her death.
Yeah.
They'd already done that for years, though. They stopped working for a long time. I believe they've gone back to work now. I could be wrong. But they've gone back to work now. But they were bankrolled for a long time. Their mortgage was being paid by people who had donated, and all sorts, which is all right, fair enough. You're going on this worldwide search for your child. But no, they benefited financially from it for a long time. So I actually don't have as big an issue with them doing a book on it, especially after the policeman who was in charge of the investigation for the majority of it did exactly the same thing. And I actually think less of him for doing that. But then his career was completely ruined by the whole thing because he refused to consider that Madeleine had been abducted. This was the thing, Gordon Brown got him sacked. In the documentary, they actually said that Gordon Brown phoned officials in Portugal to say he needs to be removed from his position. And his theory was that the British government couldn't have two middle to upper class parents having killed their child on holiday, and the way that would look for Britain. Which I thought was a bit of a stretch, to be honest.
I was going to say, because now the conspiracy kicks up.
Yeah, that's when he loses me, because I'm like, look, I don't doubt he got you sacked, but I don't think it's because of that. I think you were making all sorts of noise, because it came after he made very public claims that the British police were making it as difficult as possible for them to do their job. Which I don't doubt that they were doing, because at the time the opinion of the Portuguese police was very, very low, and they did. At no point, at any point during the investigation, did they do a good job. So that is the one thing I would say they did a shocking job from start to finish.
And do you think the McCanns lucked out with that, or do you think when they were planning this they knew that?
No, I think they lucked out. This is the thing, I don't think it was a grand conspiracy in terms of they went on holiday with an idea of if Madeleine died or any of the children died, they could do X, Y and Z.
No, of course not.
I think they were highly...
I'm saying, in that moment when you go like, okay, we're going to cover it up, I think, do you think when they were playing they went, well look, the police aren't going to do this and that because they're not that good?
No,
or do you think
I think the chips just fell very luckily in a lot of ways. I think they got fortunate. I think things like interfering with the apartment was 100% deliberate. I think... If you believe your daughter's gone missing, you don't let people in.
And that's the thing, isn't it? It's the fact that she said she's been taken, not she's missing. If she said she's missing, like I said, you can sort of excuse it as they're turning the place up looking for her.
I actually think, had she said something different, my opinion on the whole thing might have been different, but it was from the get-go they made a mistake. Point. And then it was the fact that there's no evidence necessarily pointing towards the fact they killed their daughter, but there's no evidence there isn't, and there's absolutely zero evidence that she was taken.
And yes, there's no concrete evidence, so they're not going to be convicted, and certainly not now, 20 odd years after the event, or 15 years after.
We're never going to get a resolution to it.
Let's make this clear to our listeners, guys. It's the smallest details that can trip you up. If you're going to plan a crime, it's literally because I'm with you. I think if she hadn't have said she's been taken, you could excuse everything from that point on as parents overturning the room looking for their child, grieving parents who don't want to return to the scene where they think their child might have been killed, blah 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 blah. But because of that, because what she said immediately, she said from minute one it's a crime, and it's like, well, hang on a minute,
you've got no evidence.
Why are you saying it's a crime? I'm with you. It's
I think that's where I lie with it. I'm not saying it's 100% certain that they killed their child, but it's far more likely. I think they lucked out in terms of the fact Pride of Luge is actually quite rife with paedophiles. I think that went well for them. There is a known paedophile ring in that area within a 40-mile radius of Praia da Luz.
Classic family holiday.
So I think they got very lucky in a lot of different ways that it gave enough reasonable doubt that they could get away with it.
And that's it. It comes down to reasonable doubt, and that's all they did from minute 1, hour 1. They set about to create doubt by tampering with the evidence, by playing with the room, by I'm sold on it.
Oh, nice. I actually convinced you on a conspiracy for once.
Yeah, no. I think, like I said, I'd never considered the idea of the sedation, and actually, it lines up so well with what we know about it. Like you said, kids, like young kids, are not good sleepers. Like sometimes you do get them that sleep through, but with all that commotion, that they would just let through another. Like that's just not going to happen.
Yeah,
it's not.
No.
Or it's highly unlikely.
Yeah.
So the idea that they were stating their children, it again ties into the idea that they were quite happy to leave them on their own. Plays into the idea of why they didn't want the child service, not child services, the nannying service involved, because hey, look, you know, you don't want them to come in and see that your kids are fucking spark out every night. And I think, the idea that you might get it wrong, like you said, you know, firstly, it's not a guarantee. Secondly, they're probably using over-the-counter pharmaceuticals from a foreign country, and the idea that you would have got that wrong by accident, by drinking, whatever, it's believable. It's very believable.
Yeah. But one thing I would say, I'd like to say for legal purposes, this is all speculation. This is just our opinion. It's
everything's speculation.
So no, we can't prove anything. I'm not actually accusing the McCanns of being murderers because I can't.
Well, like I said, I wouldn't necessarily say it's murder. I think it's manslaughter.
Yeah. I don't think any of it was premeditated, other than the fact they were sedating them.
Their real crime, and obviously, look, you guys are going to write in and tell us, well, no, the crime is the death of the child. But I think, from a legal standpoint, their real crime is beyond the negligence and that. It's the tampering with the evidence. It's the lack of cooperation with the police. It's the hampering of police investigation. That's the crime. Because you know what it is? It's up till then, it's accidental. Then it's intentional. Then intent comes in. And for me, in terms of law and crime, intent plays a huge role. I'm not saying you're exempt from crimes if you didn't mean it. Of course I'm not. The negligence of them for supposedly sedating their children and, you know, covering up. But
the negligence of leaving them on their own for that length of time. The other thing that sort of gets pointed out when you sort of discrediting the kidnapping, there's 2 other children in the apartment. If you're and the thing is, the McCanns was trying to give off this image. It was planned. It was premeditated. These people knew what they were doing. Well, then why would you leave 2 children behind?
Yeah, and also if you're a paedophile, you take them all.
Yeah.
You know, fuck one, kill one. Fuck one, kill one. I mean, like, I don't know what the operating system
You sound
is
like
for
you very much know what the modus operandi
I don't know what they do. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah.
It's all speculation.
But no, like I said, I genuinely, that's what I think happened.
I think there's like you said, there's so many holes in the official story that the only way that you can line it up without holes is this narrative that you've laid out for us here today, because that way you go through it and every point is accounted for. In every other story, you're like, but what about this? What about that? But in that narrative, there's no, there's nothing really that you can't account for.
If there was physical evidence in the room that someone else had been in there, even if it was just a tiny thing, like there was an unknown fingerprint on the front door, I'd have been like, no, it's more believable now that she was taken by someone. But there was no sign of anything. And you couldn't have got in. Even with the doors being unlocked, you would still need to open the door somehow.
I don't know anyone that's ever opened the door with their fucking mind.
Do you know what I mean?
How high end are these paedophiles?
There would be a print of some kind somewhere, and there's just nothing. So that's my issue with all of it. So yeah, and my issue with the opposite side is more of their argument for it not being the McCanns is because there's no evidence. But you've got no evidence that she was taken, so she didn't just disappear off the face of the earth.
And also, you went, and as we sort of said, she went to take him from minute 1.
Yeah.
You wouldn't do that.
No.
You know, your mind might create these scenarios.
You would be like, "Fuck, she's gone."
Yeah,
like,
that's it. She's gone. Yeah. That's what you'd say.
Yeah. You wouldn't even say the word missing. But she's gone. Like,
I can't find Maddie.
Yeah. It wouldn't be. She's been taken.
Someone's taken her.
Unless you saw her being carried off by someone.
Yeah, different story. But she didn't.
No. So no, I genuinely think they acted very quickly, and just after that, just had to lean into
thought
it.
on their toes and then were stuck in this lie. No, I agree. I hope we've given you a lot to think about.
Yeah.
I hope we've convinced one or two of you of a few conspiracies in the world. But even if we've not convinced you, I hope you've enjoyed it nonetheless. I hope you've come along with the ride and stuck with us despite the quite frankly not nice things we said about you at the start.
No, but you know we love you as much as we hate you, so...
We really do. You know, the love is limitless. The hate is limited. You know, I wouldn't kill any of you. I don't care enough.
No, that's quite right. Quite right.
I might sedate you.
Yeah, well, now we're going Epstein territory here, my friend.
I'm not going to rape him. Well, hold on a minute.
Mate, the way you've been talking in this pod, you seem to know an awful lot about how they operate.
Also, you're suggesting that we have a lot of underage listeners.
Well, no, but you don't necessarily... Rapists aren't just going after children.
Epstein was.
No, he went after prepubescent girls as well.
Yeah, underage.
Yeah.
Not like kids, but legally they were kids.
Yeah.
I was saying, like, I don't like the power. Look, I can be accused of a lot of things. Okay, like right then I'm talking about potentially manslaughtering all of our listeners.
Yeah.
But suddenly you throw rape into the mix, like I'm gonna fucking butt fuck them. Like, where does that come from?
Well, you don't necessarily have to sedate someone to kill them. There's many ways to go about it.
You don't have to sedate them to rape them.
No, but it helps.
It helps with the killing them as well. Now, you sound like someone who's had experience. You're like, I'll tell you now, when I rape...
I think killing someone's easier than raping them, personally.
Well, you don't have to think about it that much, do you? They're gone out of the way.
Yeah.
Plus, I don't know, like... The idea for me as well, like, trying to get hard in that situation is just a bit much.
Well, no, but I guess if it's what you're into, it's not going to take much.
Yeah, I just think I definitely have performance issues on the night.
Sorry, love, can you just wait a second? No,
Imagine
sorry,
that.
That's a very dark turn.
Imagine that as your defence as well. Yeah. Like, oh, look, I can't be a rapist. I don't, I find it really hard to perform under pressure.
Yeah. Right, well, guys, on that lovely twist, I think it's time to say goodbye now. As always, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, all of them really. There's pretty much not
literally
many
anywhere you get. We're also on iHeart
Radio.
Now we're on. We're everywhere, man.
Yeah.
We're everywhere. Like the conspiracy we're taking
you
over.
have no excuse now not to listen.
We made some powerful friends and now we're moving up in the world. Yeah, no, you don't have any excuse to listen. We're also uploading new episodes as well as we're going through the back catalogue and upload them to YouTube. So keep your eyes peeled there. You can find us Crossing Swords on YouTube and we will work our way through them. So keep your eyes peeled. You'll be getting little treats here and there. You can find us on Facebook, Crossing Swords on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter @Swords Crossing. You can find us on Instagram, Crossing Swords _podcast. And you can find us by writing to us crossingswords19@gmail.com. That's 19, the number not spelled out. And guys, we want to hear from you. Look, we want to know what you should be, what we should be doing. We do this for us, obviously, but we're more than happy to tailor it to you. And look, much like an American sitcom, we're going to go on for far too long, season by season, and so we need some filler ideas from you guys. Absolutely. We're more than happy to throw some stuff in, but tell us what you want to hear us doing. Also, respond to us, man. Tell us how these episodes are going. Tell us what you think about them. If for example, today, have you been convinced? Do you think something else happened to Maddie McCann? Write to us. Tell us, man. Keep that conversation going.
Yeah, just talk to us, like, about anything, any part of it, what you want. Yeah, we're very much open to all ideas. So
we have a real open door policy.
Yeah, absolutely. At the same time, if you're someone listening to this that would like to be a guest on the podcast, please get in touch.
Absolutely, we're looking for guests. The best way I think to get in contact as a guest, email us, crossingswords19@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Tell us why you should be a guest, and I don't mean like sell yourself in like I'm really interesting. What do you want to talk about? What do you want to talk about? What's your view? For example, we've had a couple of suggestions from people who have said, "Oh, I can be a guest and I can talk about this," but it's not that interesting because actually it's something that we all agree on. And as we said at the top of the show, it would just be like 10 minutes of us going, yep, agreed, 100%, and then it'll be done. We're not necessarily looking for controversy, or controversy if I say it properly, but we're looking for differing views, and also
we want a bit of back and forth.
We want people who know things that we know nothing about. We want to do subjects on racial sensitivity, but look, we're too fucking white cisgendered males. We can't talk about racial sensitivity. We can't talk about the LGBT community.
We actually had a discussion when we said we would like to talk about Black Lives Matter, but we're not the right
qualified
people to do it.
We're not, and again with LGBT issues, we're not qualified to talk about those.
No, we're not. And that's the thing. We like people from the BLM movement, people from the LGBTQ plus
community. Absolutely.
To get in contact and come on and talk to us, because you have insights that I'm never going to have.
It doesn't have to be, also just to kind of round it off, it doesn't have to be such a serious subject. Maybe you're a choreographer or something and we know nothing about dance, so get in contact and we can talk about dance, and we can talk about what we believe about dance. Maybe you're an artist, you're a sculptor, and you want to talk to us about art and the things that maybe we've not...
We're cultured.
We're cultured, but I mean, like, modern art can get fucking stuffed. So talk to us about that if you're a modern artist. Come and talk to us about that, man. Tell us about why... Try and convince us why it's so good.
Absolutely.
Fashion. We don't know anything about fashion. Talk to us about fashion. You know, food. We love eating it. We don't know fuck all about cooking it. So talk to us. Tell us about cooking it. That's what we want to hear from you guys, and not exclusive to that list I've just read out.
No. So yeah, just have a bang on us, really.
You're always welcome, always more than welcome to cross swords with us here anytime.
And on that note, we will see you next time. Goodbye.